this whole idea of like the perfect storm of like your A&R guy going, hey, go to use this old Lennon and McCartney technique, pick up a newspaper, give it a read, and see what inspires you. And this being the story that awaited him, and being the inspiration for the song that, as stated, would go on to be one of the biggest hits in America over that decade, is all just really interesting stuff, as understandably tragic as it is.
So you still think it's an accident, do you? Uh, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of That's Audiophiles. My name is John. His name is Andy. And if one day I should become a singer with a Spanish bum who sings for women of great virtue, I'd sing to them with a guitar I borrowed from a coffee bar. Well, what you don't know doesn't hurt you. More on that later. But first, what have you got in store for us today, Andy?
Oh, we are going to continue this tour of revisiting acts that we've done. This wasn't planned either, which is really weird, but here we are. We showed up today just exchanging songs by artists that we've done in the past here on the channel. So I'm going to continue that theme, and I'm going to give you a track by the band Fastball. Now we did Falling Upstairs off of their I want to say that was their second album, I think. It's quite some time ago, and I think when you gave it a listen, you said that there were shades of some Elvis Costello going on in a bit of their sound in that track. Any faint recollection of having listened to that song, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got a hazy image of the thumbnail as well. Yeah.
Yes. So the track that I'm going to have you check out was, I'm sure, brought up during the discussion, and maybe even in the comments field by some of our listeners, but it's their biggest hit, uh, and it is a song called "The Way." So
This is the way.
this is the way, at least for now and today. So yeah, go off, give this a spin, and come back and let me know what you made of it.
Well done.
Director of Public Relations. There's no other. Okay.
We made up their minds and they started packing. They left before the sun came up that day. An exit to eternal summer slacking. But where were they going without ever knowing the way? They drank up the wine and they got to talking. They now had more important things to say.
Okay, so that's really interesting. We're going to go back to the start, I'm afraid. But there you go. So, really interesting start. So you got the FM set tune dial thing that's been used in loads of different songs. Obviously the Dexies, but it's loads of them. And then you get this. There's a familiarity to this. At first, I thought it was kind of like it reminded me a bit of Space, the Liverpool band. There's a bit of that in there. So you get this sort of CCTV sounding and lower quality sound to the track, which is always quite interesting. And at some point it's going to expand into Technicolor, which it does. Your man's singing. It looks when he's there singing straight in the camera initially with his leather coat and all that. It looked like one of like Christopher's friends from The Sopranos. That's just made me think of that. So yeah, really interesting. But there is a familiarity to the tune as well. So yeah, let's see.
Director of Public Relations. There's no other.
This feels really 90s. 1998. just then I was expecting him to go into my Delilah. Yes, it's Tom Jones. That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like, Delilah. Bloody hell, that's hilarious.
We now had more important things to say. And when the car broke down, they started walking. Where were they going without ever knowing the way? Anyone could see the road that they walk on is paved in gold. And it's always summer, they'll never get cold, they'll never get hungry, they'll never get old and gray. You can see their shadows wandering off somewhere. They won't make it home, but they really don't care. They wanted the highway, they're happier there today. Children woke up and they couldn't find them. Left before the
This is just what I was thinking. So that verse, but the music's fairly unremarkable. It doesn't really do very much. It's almost like it's treading water. You've got quite a nice beat, and the guitar's just doing stuff. But there's nothing. It's not really carrying the tune. It's the vocal melody that carries the whole thing. And I was just thinking that sounds quite British, almost Mersey beat style, and then we get the chorus, and it's pretty much they put some more stuff in the chorus, but it is the vocal melody that carries the whole thing, and it's really nice. And the way he sort of scans it, paid with gold, etc. I'll have to write that down actually, but going back, but yeah, it's really nicely done. There's some horns in there, I think. I think there's some keyboard action as well, which sort of rounds it off and everything. But it's all about his delivery, I think. And I was thinking it's really 60s and a bit sort of Mersey beat, which Space owed a lot to as well. So yeah, this cross between Tom Jones and Space, that's really interesting. And then they're watching a sort of 60s version of themselves on the TV screen. I like the idea of the band watching images on the screen of the shop window from the street. That's quite cool.
sun came up that day. They just drove off and left it all behind them. Where were they going without ever knowing the way? Anyone can see the road that they walk on is paved in gold. It's always summer, they'll never get cold, they'll never get hungry, they'll never get old and gray. You can see the shadows wandering off somewhere. They won't make it home, but they really don't care. They wanted the highway, they're happier there today. Anyone could see the road that they walk on is paved in gold. And it's always summer, they'll never get cold, they'll never get hungry, they'll never get old and gray. You can see the shadows wandering off somewhere. They won't make it home, but they really don't care. They wanted the highway, they're happy there today.
Yeah, I quite like that in a way. It's quite catchy, quite well done. It did have a kind of 60s vibe to it. Even the drummer was doing his best sort of Ringo impression. Had a nice little mop on his head as well. So yeah, I think musically it wasn't anything to write home about, but it was catchy. So I think it'll probably stick in your head for a while. Um, yeah, interesting. I don't know if this band was a one-hit wonder. Um, I guess we need to find out by going back and tune it over with Andy.
All right, John. So you've returned from giving The Way by Fastball a spin. What you make of it?
So the song starts with that well-worn trope of scanning the FM dial for a song.
Mhm.
Been used many times. My mind always goes to the opening of Dixie Midnight Runners' wonderful "Searching for the Young Soul Rebels" album. The opening track begins with 50 seconds of this dial hopping, including snippets from the Sex Pistols and the Specials, before Kevin Rowland urges Jimmy and everyone, for God's sake, burn it down. Anyway, here you get a clip of, it sounds to me like it's like this sort of public announcement type thing, but it sounds familiar, like it's a hip hop sample or something, where he says director of public cuts, and then there's a female voice that kind of rings, but then it could be one of like several hundred, the sounds of that sound.
Yeah.
Before this kind of FM version of the song begins, sort of it's coming down the restrictive pipes of the CCTV footage before it morphs into crystal clear Dolby some 40 seconds or so later. But yeah, here comes your man, the singer. And first glance, it looks to me like one of Christopher's friends out of The Sopranos. Very low level. And he starts the ball rolling. And to me, it sounds, with all that sort of messing around at the start, and then he begins, and the instrumentation, it sounds like the beginning of a Space song. Space were a band predominantly in the 90s from Liverpool. So there's kind of like a familiar sound to this. Um, and as we approach that sort of mark where it switches from CCTV footage quality into proper sound um, and color vision, it sort of hits me. I was going along, and then I'm expecting the next bit. It was in my mind. It sort of fills in the gap. And the next bit, I'm expecting to go, my, Delilah. So this is a combination of like Tom Jones and space. And you can imagine over it, it is like I saw the light on the night of pass by a window, etc., etc. I must say the distraction of all this means that it's almost the first chorus before I start actually taking in the words. But just to square off that completely, Space, as I say, were a Liverpool band in the 90s. They had a couple of stylized hits that mixed in different genres, but it owed a lot to Merseybeat as much as Britpop. And their songs, Female the Species and You and Me versus the World in particular. And amazingly, they also did a song called The Ballad of Tom Jones. So the two things are meshed together. And it has a touch of that. And as the video progresses, this first third of the video. You even get the mop top drummer doing his Ringo sort of head style swinging, which then also develops later on. We reach the chorus, and he sings that anyone can see the road that they walked on is paved in gold. It has a really nice melody,
Yeah.
vocal melody to it, really nice. Although it's clearly they're an American band, there's a really British sound to the chorus, the way it's done, and it's all on the vocal melody. There's actually very little in the way of a melody from the instrumentation, particularly in the verse. It's kind of marching time, and he carries it. If you stripped out his vocals from it, it would be quite a plain song, really, to be fair. But that doesn't matter because he is carrying it through. And then he sings about it's always summer, They never get cold. They never get hungry. They never get old and grey. So in this bit, I really like as well. There's these horns wafting in at the end of these lines, and also I think I heard some sort of keyboard action, and then very much right at the end towards the video, you just see like a half a second shot going back at this guy on a keyboard. Looks like he's been dropped in by a helicopter or something, you know, poor bugger. So musically, as I say, it's not really standing out for me, but that vocal melody carries the whole thing, which again is a kind of like a Britishy 60s type thing, to an extent. Anyway, so from what I gather from here up to this point, I think it's the song's about a journey of a group that either doesn't end up where or how they expect. It's almost like a they may not grow old type thing. You know, you hear it at memorial services, you know, celebrating the end of the Second World War sort of thing. But the overall feel of the musically of the song is quite joyous, even with the flamenco dancers wafting their skirts around. As we continue into the next verse, we get these images of the band in a 1960s setup, you know, black and white, as they're watching it through the shop window, which I like. It's a really nice touch. So that ticks the boxes. I'm thinking of Mersey Beat. And then it transitions, just as I'm going, yes, it transitions into this very garish color palette with truly horrible red tuxedos, I have to say. I really dislike them, you know, I don't know, just personal taste. And it kind of made me feel, I think the tuxedos were purple in the band I'm thinking of question, but remember the Blues Brothers where they go and get the other members of the band and they're playing in a lounge doing quando, quando, quando. I think it's purple, but it's the same kind of setup. And I cut back to the guys in the street and there's a monochrome version and it looks so much better. But you know, you get the women with the long gloves and the dancing and all that. Fair enough. And then your man just comes forward for his short guitar sort of, you know, solo-y type part thing. And there's a really strong sort of Latin American flavor to his licks, which is interesting. It definitely sounds like it's south of the border, your border, the one with the wall, you know. And then we go back to the chorus. And this video has more time jumps than Scott Bakula. Now it's set in present day, which for them I think is the 90s. It really has that sort of brightness and technicolor about it, which is a very 90s sort of video. And for no apparent reason, they're on top of a dilapidated industrial building. And again, for no reason, though, but they're clearly all buying into the narrative, the way the singer sort of, the guitarist jumps off this and, you know, slow-mo through it. I mean, I don't know how much that cost, a fair amount, but they milk it for all they can get. And then he's safely deposited on the roof of a nearby vehicle so he can continue his guitar pickings as he's driven away to the nearest spinal unit. And then we fade out and done. I did enjoy the video actually a lot. And I love the idea of the band watching the screens in black and white from a shop window and then sort of mooching away at the end of it.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, this, believe it or not, you're probably a little bit young, but this is the sort of thing that people did in the 70s, particularly, and a bit in the 80s, is they'd watch TV programs through a shop window sometimes because there wasn't a TV in every room, you know.
Right.
Back then there was one per household, and you had to get off your bloody chair to change the channel as well. But this is a really catchy number. I would say it wasn't like a particularly like profound song or anything, and not knowing much about the band, he says their biggest sort of hits. This kind of sounds like a sort of 90s one-hit wonder type tune. It has all that sort of hallmarks with the sound of it, but I really like the sort of the throwback quality of it, the sort of Mersey beat type sort of influence on it, which made it quite joyous. I haven't got a Scooby's what they were going on about, to be fair.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you liked it. They exist somewhere between one hit wonder and I don't know, wildly successful because they've had a handful of songs that have done well. I just think that this is the one, but I could totally get where you're coming from. Divorced of any information or any of that stuff, and you
Yeah.
just give this a listen. It does smack of that. But they've had a few tracks that have charted. This one just happened to be the one that charted the best. As mentioned, we
Sorry,
devoted. Go ahead.
sorry, and just also to say that that is only one measure of success, record sales. It's not the be
Yeah,
all and
no,
end
you're
all,
absolutely right. Yeah,
particularly
I
with
don't want to
the music we listen to on this channel. So
without
there you
question.
go. I wasn't
Yeah, yeah,
trying to
yeah.
be judgy,
Yeah, no, 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 of course not. I didn't think you were. I just wanted, in case there was a fastball stand that tuned in to watch this episode and they're like, oh, yeah. But I mean, God, some of my favorite bands are no-hit wonders. So, I'm
Yeah,
not,
well,
yeah, and
exactly.
I would say you too. Um, you as well. You too.
Yeah,
That's all.
not you too. No.
God,
Check your iPhone. They put another album on there without you looking. Go
the
on.
beast that eats and never dies, that fucking album. So as mentioned, we devoted an episode to their track Falling Upstairs in the past, during which we covered a lot about the band. So I will only briefly touch on them before switching gears to the specific track and the album on which it features. So Fastball is an American rock band that was formed in Austin, Texas in 1992 by Tony Scalzo, vocals, bass guitar, as well as keyboards and guitar. There's also Joey Sheffield on drums and percussion, and Miles Zuniga on vocals and guitar. So Tony wearing a lot of hats, as vocals, bass guitar, keyboards, guitar. But yeah, three-man band. In 1998, their second studio album. See, this is where I screwed. This is their second album. The one that I had you listen to, Falling Upstairs, I believe, is their third. So in 1998, their second studio album, All the Pain Money Can Buy, released on Hollywood Records, and it reached platinum sales within 6 months of its release, and it stayed on the Billboard 200 chart for an entire year. The members of Fastball still had side jobs as late as January 1998. Tony Scalzo worked the graveyard shift at a bagel manufacturer in Austin. Well, this was like they were coming to fame. So Joey Sheffield, and Miles Zuniga would be on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno and the Late Night Show with Conan O'Brien just 4 months later. Their songs The Way and Out of My Head reached number one and number 14 on the Billboard's Adult Alternative Songs chart, respectively. In addition, the group was nominated for 2 Grammy Awards in 1999. Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with the vocal for The Way, and Best Long-Form Music Video for their promotional video of The Way. They also received an MTV Video Music Award nomination for Best New Artist. The Austin Chronicle awarded the band with 1998's Album of the Year, Best Video, Best Single/EP, Band of the Year, and Best Pop Band. Uncut and AllMusic both rate the album 4 out of 5 stars, while the Chicago Tribune awarded it 3.5 out of 4. The Times graded it an 8 out of 10, while Entertainment Weekly graded it an A-. The single The Way stayed on top of the Billboard Modern Rock track chart for 7 weeks and was a top 5 hit on Billboard's Top 40 mainstream chart. The song was also voted as one of VH1's 100 greatest songs from the 1990s. So let's jump into these lyrics, of which you didn't catch much, but you enjoyed the melody of that chorus. There's no doubt there. They made up their minds and they started packing. They left before the sun came up that day. An exit to eternal summer slacking. But where were they going without ever knowing the way? They drank up the wine and they got to talking. They now had more important things to say. And when the car broke down, they started walking. Where were they going without ever knowing the way? Anyone can see the road that they walk on is paved in gold, and it's always summer, they'll never get cold. They'll never get hungry. They'll never get old and gray. You can see their shadows wandering off somewhere. They won't make it home, but they really don't care. They wanted the highway. They're happier there today. Today. Their children woke up and they couldn't find them. They left before the sun came up that day. They just drove off and left it all behind them. But where were they going without ever knowing the way? Anyone can see the road that they walk on is paved in gold. And it's always summer, they'll never get cold. They'll never get hungry, they'll never get old and gray. You can see their shadows wandering off somewhere. They won't make it home, but they really don't care. They wanted the highway, they're happier there. Today, today, anyone can see the road that they walk on is paved in gold. And it's always summer, they never get cold. They'll never get hungry, they'll never get old and gray. You can see their shadows wandering off somewhere. They won't make it home, but they really don't care. They wanted the highway. They're happier there today. Today. So, really interesting backstory about this one. So Jim Baviglia of AmericanSongwriter.com published an article back in March of, interestingly enough, this year, in which he discusses the inspiration of the song with a bit of the band's background information for context. In it, he wrote, the band's 1996 debut album, Make Your Mama Proud, mostly came and went without a trace. And in many cases, a band whose first album sinks like that finds their record deal is in jeopardy. Luckily for Fastball, there was some corporate rearranging going on at Hollywood Records around that time. That allowed them to fly under the radar, which meant they were able to record a sophomore album. By that time, the band better understood their strengths. Instead of going for the punk sound that adorned their debut, Fastball instead cultivated an approach that built on classic songwriting of pop tunesmiths ranging from the Beatles to Elvis Costello. The only problem was that chief songwriter Scalzo couldn't figure out what he should be writing. An A&R man suggested to Scalzo to try an old Beatles technique, pick up a newspaper and see if anything inspired. Scalzo agreed to attempt it, and he almost immediately settled upon a story about an elderly Texas couple, Layla and Raymond Howard, who had gone on a trip and not reached their intended destination, causing great concern in their kids. Scalzo let his imagination run with the tale, wondering why two people might choose to try to escape from society. He completed The Way before the sad ending of the story was discovered. Though Layla had Alzheimer's and Raymond was recovering from brain surgery, the couple had been driving to a local festival. They were discovered 2 weeks later, dead at the bottom of a ravine near Hot Springs, Arkansas, hundreds of miles off their intended route. And over at Alternative Echo, Nicole Metzler posted an article she wrote back in 2017 reminiscing on the song and the story that inspired it. Within the article, she opines, I'd always wondered what their family thought of Fastball's song once they heard it plastered all over the radio and MTV a year later. Were they happy their parents' story was immortalized in one of the decade's biggest hits? Or were they angry it was ever being focused on? Did they immediately turn off the radio once it came on? Or did they listen to it in full, thinking back on happier family memories? In an interview with WUSA 9 in 2017, I finally got my answer. I was blown away, said Rhonda Alford, Layla's granddaughter. I just couldn't believe somebody would do something like that for my grandma. Layla's son, Hal Ray Copeland, said, I liked the song a lot. He later added, my cousin said Layla left a star on TV and the radio all the time, a song about her. She would have loved that. So yeah, really interesting stuff. I couldn't help but think of this track when we were reviewing the track devoted to the gentleman who lived beneath his floorboards, and how that had kind of been inspired by the day's news or the news of the time. And to be fair, the underlying motif of the last two tracks I brought you was this idea of being inspired to write a song based off an image in a newspaper or magazine or an article in a newspaper or magazine. And with busting up a Starbucks being inspired by a photograph covering the World Trade Organization, protests, and this being inspired by this interesting little article in a, Texas newspaper, and the really eerie and unfortunate outcome of a couple living in Texas attempting to go to a Texas music festival and ending up like 2 states over or whatever in Arkansas at the bottom of a ravine in this horribly tragic accident is just really interesting. And this whole idea of like the perfect storm of like your A&R guy going, hey, go to use this old Lennon and McCartney technique, pick up a newspaper, give it a read, and see what inspires you. And this being the story that awaited him, and being the inspiration for the song that, as stated, would go on to be one of the biggest hits in America over that decade, is all just really interesting stuff, as understandably tragic as it is.
So you still think it's an accident, do you? No,
You think Scalzo may have been like at the depths of despair trying to come up with motivation for a song? Maybe he orchestrated all of this?
Moida, Moida, I tell you. No, I think yeah, it's interesting that he said that to them. It's really cool. The first thing I think is I read the news today. Oh boy.
Yeah, I read the news today.
Yeah, the song itself. Now you know this. It's still really respectful, though, isn't it? It's quite a nice.
It romanticizes everything, and in fairness, as stated, he had no idea the outcome of the story because it was still a cold case at that point. They had no idea what had happened. It's unfortunate the way it turned out, but it's also really nice that the family has received it the way they have. Their
Yeah.
grandparents live in perpetuity through this lovely upbeat song.
There is definitely these sort of echoes of the memorial service that I can't remember it word for word, but they go on about they will not grow old as we who are left grow old, et cetera, et cetera, and it has that in it, so it has that sort of feel to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
It is. It is. It's a very interesting anecdote about how a song came to be. So I thought that was one of the, I mean, on top of it being a big hit and all that stuff, and us having covered them before, just the anecdote and the story of what drummed it up, I just thought at the very least has some human interest to it. So I'm really glad you enjoyed giving this a spin, John.
Yeah, definitely.
Guys, out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of this track, The Way by Fastball. If you're a fellow Yank like myself, and of a certain age, this song was unavoidable. I mean, it was everywhere. So please let us know your thoughts on it. If there's other tracks by these guys we should check out, or any other track by any other group or artist, please feel free to drop them down in the comments field below. We are adding them to our ever-growing list of viewer requests, and we will eventually get to it. All that out of the way, please also like, share, and or subscribe if you haven't done any or all of those things. We really do appreciate it, and thank you in advance. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.